Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Wild Game Anglers podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have a truly versatile content creator join us, Don, the mastermind behind not just one, but two amazing YouTube channels. On his first channel, Bucktail Outdoors, Don takes us on thrilling weekly adventures in the great outdoors of New Hampshire and beyond. From hunting white-tailed deer and fishing to hiking and shed hunting with his wife Karen and dog Bodie, he shares his journey of embracing a simpler, nature-filled life in the hills of central New Hampshire. But that's not all. Don's creativity doesn't stop when he's off the water. After a long recovery period following an Achilles injury, Don discovered his passion for airbrushing fishing lures and giving birth to his second channel, Ragged Edge Lure Works. On this channel, he brings vibrant fishing lures to life, experimenting with colors, patterns, and techniques that are as mesmerizing as they are inspiring. In today's conversation, we'll dive into Don's adventures, his journey into lore crafting, and how he balances his love for the outdoors with his creativity behind the scenes. Don, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Henry. Thank you for having me. That's quite an introduction. I hope I can live up to
Oh, I'm sure you will.
it. No, it's awesome to be here. I really appreciate you asking me to be a part.
Well, I appreciate you accepting the invite also. I'm really happy to have you here.
Excellent. Me too. All right.
Yeah, so we talked about it the other day, but I didn't recall exactly like how we discovered each other through YouTube. If it was me who found you first or you who found me first, I just know that over the years we've kind of built a YouTube friendship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm trying to think back, and so I kind of went back through some videos. So I remember the approximate time frame. It's been almost 3 years, I think, since we first met.
Okay,
And for me, YouTube is just been a great place to meet like-minded individuals like yourself.
absolutely.
And I think maybe you made a comment on one of my videos first, but I went out and checked your channel and said, "Yeah, this is a guy I need to meet."
Yeah, we have a lot in common.
We do have a lot in common. Other than the fact that we live in two different countries, we're
Yeah,
really not that far
no,
apart.
no, you're right
Yeah,
down on the other side of the border.
yeah.
No, so
And where
actually
you
New
are,
Hampshire is right below Quebec, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I used to do a lot of business in Quebec when I was working,
Okay.
and I spent a lot of time in the Montreal area.
Oh,
Some of my big customers were in Longueuil,
oh yeah.
yeah, Boucherville.
Oh yeah.
So I'm familiar. I'm familiar with the.
Well, that's my area. You know, where
Yeah.
I work, I'm right near the South Shore. I'm near the Olympic Stadium in Montreal. That's where I work, and I live on the North Shore in Mascouche. So
Oh,
that's the north of Boucherville. But Boucherville and Longueuil, where I grew up on my where you see the land on my mom's YouTube channel, that's about an hour from Boucherville.
okay. So is she in the Eastern Townships or?
Right beside. She's in it's central Quebec. It's right like the eastern. I went to school in the Eastern Townships, so like the bus would
Okay.
come pick me up, and I did my high school in the Eastern Townships in Richmond.
Excellent. Well, I have a lot of really good friends in that area that I developed through my work relationships, but then they've also transpired into hunting relationships and
Oh yeah.
whatnot. So,
Well, the
yeah,
Eastern Townships is a nice place for hunting.
yeah, yeah. Well, actually, so one of my customers that was based in their headquarters were in Boucherville, but their manufacturing was up in Trois Rivières.
Oh yeah.
They invited me and my product manager to go hunting in Anacostia Island,
Oh yeah. That's
which
paradise.
you are not kidding. That was probably of all the out of state or out of country hunting trips that I've been on, that was absolutely the most special. I mean, that's like adventure hunting
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me. For
Oh
me,
yeah. The
yeah,
deer is
yeah.
overpopulated that island now,
It was amazing. It was amazing how many deer we actually saw,
and
and we were there.
they have big antlers too, right?
Well, I didn't shoot any with big antlers.
Okay.
I had the opportunity, but you're allowed to take two deer,
Yeah.
and so the first day I just decided to shoot a deer that was basically a 4 point.
Okay.
Um, but I passed up what would have been probably the biggest deer of my life because the next day, if you're familiar with that, the guides take you to specific zones. And so you're assigned a zone.
Okay.
And the next day, I was going to be hunting the ocean zone. And
Okay.
I didn't want to tag out. I wanted the opportunity to fish on the shore of the
Yeah.
ocean.
Yeah.
So, but
And that would have
to
been
get
what
ahead
for
of,
for Atlantic salmon to fish for?
um, that's what they fish for
Yeah.
is for Atlantic salmon. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
And there's striped bass.
it was a winter hunting trip, so
Okay.
it was strictly hunting for us. But
Okay.
beautiful, beautiful,
Oh yeah.
beautiful
I
place.
never
But
went, but from what I hear, I need to go one
uh,
day.
you do, and it's unfortunately like hunting everywhere in North America. Um, Guided hunting trips have gotten crazy expensive,
Yeah. That's one of the
and
reasons why I never went.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And personally, I probably never would have went either, except we were invited guests.
Yeah. You never say no
So
to an offer like that.
no, you don't. No, you don't. So, but yeah, we got a little ahead of ourselves with that. But yeah,
That's
that
all
was
right.
yeah,
You recently got a rotator cuff surgery, and now
yeah.
you're on the recovery process. How are you feeling? And do you feel like you'll be back out on the kayak soon for some largemouth bass?
Well, so I had the surgery 4 weeks ago. It'll be 4 weeks on Thursday. I'm still in a sling. I'll be
Yeah.
wearing this sling for at least two, maybe three more weeks.
Okay.
I did start physical therapy yesterday and was encouraged by what they said because originally my surgeon told me when I told my surgeon what my passion was, kayak bass angling, she told me not to expect to do it this summer.
Ah.
When I was with I found out, you need to pay more attention to your physical therapist sometimes than your surgeon.
Yeah.
Um, and so the physical therapist gave me some really good hope that I may be back into the kayak fishing by mid-June.
That's
So
interesting.
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
For me, the big thing is lifting the heavy kayak.
Yeah.
These are fishing kayaks that mine loaded up weighs about 140 pounds.
Yeah.
Uh, so loading that on and off either my truck or the trailer, that's where the risk is for me. I cast with my right arm. I only reel with my left. So I think the fishing aspect of it will be fine.
Yeah.
It's just loading and unloading. And I have my wife, Karen, will help me here, load up my kayak. And the guys in the club, the guys and the gals in the club will help me unload when we get
Oh,
to the destination. So
that's very good.
I'm knock on wood, I'll be fishing fishing sometime in June.
Well, I'm
So
anxious to see that, and also for largemouth bass and well, both bass species here, it only opens June 15th, so maybe we'll be hitting them at the same time.
yeah, yeah, maybe. Now it's funny because in New Hampshire we can fish for bass year round.
Yeah.
Um, it's catch and release for certain amounts of time. Like during the spawn period from May 15th to June 15th, all bass have to be immediately released.
Okay.
But in New York, where I'm originally from, I'm originally from the town of Messina, New York, which is right on the St. Lawrence River,
Okay.
just across the river from Cornwall, Ontario.
Yeah.
So I'm not that far. I was only 70 miles from Montreal growing up. Um, you can't even fish for bass during that off season.
Okay.
Um, so it's a little bit different, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't keep bass anyhow for the most part, unless I inadvertently kill one.
Yeah.
Then I'm certainly not going to let it go to waste, and I'll take it home and eat it because they are fine table fare.
Yeah.
Uh, just I prefer to let bass go. If I'm going to keep
Me
fish to
too.
eat, it's generally going to be perch or crappie or walleye. Some of the walleye I see you catch and release.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh my god, that would be on my table.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. For real.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I don't mind. I keep a few, but I don't know. I have a pleasure of releasing fish, but except when I rent a cottage, when we're out up north and we rent a cottage, then we know for supper, we're eating walleye, you know?
And I'm a big proponent of catch and release, but I'm also catch and keep. There's nothing wrong with it as
Nope.
long as you're staying within the guidelines and the
Yeah.
law.
Yeah.
Fish are great to eat,
Oh, yeah.
but I'm like you. I mean, like let's just say I was ice fishing and I was catching 30 or 40 perch.
Yeah.
I'd take home 6 or 7 or 8
Yeah.
because I'd rather eat them within a day or two than
Yeah.
freeze them.
Exactly.
So
Me too.
yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back on the water. I may actually do some stream fishing prior to the kayak fishing once
Okay.
I'm back out there.
For some
So,
little brook trout or?
yeah, we have some good bodies of water here for brook trout. Most of our streams have brook trout, and the state of New Hampshire does a lot of stocking, but all of the stocking that they do is for cold water species: brook trout, rainbow trout, brown trout.
Okay.
Bass, walleye, those types of fish, they don't concern themselves with. That's all just, what's natural.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wish they'd change that. But they do a really good job of stocking trout. So, and there's some really nice streams that have good native brook trout on them.
Oh,
So
yeah. Those
I'll
are the
try to
best
get
tasting
into.
ones.
Oh, they are. Yeah, they're tasty. Yeah, for sure, for sure. So yeah,
I would like to ask you a quick question. Like, how did all this start for you from the hunting and fishing?
sure. So I've been fishing since I was a little kid. Um, it was really my grandfather who really got me into fishing. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but my dad worked for General Motors and moved up to northern New York when they opened a manufacturing plant in Messina when I
Okay.
was a year and a half old.
Okay.
But we used to go back and forth to Ohio, and from a young age, my grandfather would take me out hiking, hunting, fishing. I mean, we would go foraging for mushrooms,
Yeah.
and he taught me how to catch my own bait, with a seine, with a cross net,
Okay.
and I started fishing at probably 6 or 7 years old. When I was probably 10 years old, my grandfather gave me my first real fishing combo.
Okay.
It was a Fluger rod and reel, and now this is in 1964 or 65, something like that. So Fluger, I probably had the best fishing reel combo of any of my friends. Most of my friends were fishing with the old Zebco 202 or the 303,
Yeah.
the push button
Yeah.
close
Yeah.
bait.
Yeah.
This was an open face spinning reel that he taught me how to fish with. And I had that rod and reel combo. I used that until I was in my 20s. Actually, I was in the military and somebody stole it out of my truck.
Oh,
And which bummed me out
for
because they
sure.
stole a fishing rod and reel that I'd been using for 12 years,
Has
13
a
years.
sentimental value.
Yeah. And my first buck knife that my grandfather had also given me. They took both of those things out of my truck. So,
Uh,
but from a young age, I was using this equipment, and my mom, these were simpler times and in a small town. So my mom would drive me about 2 or 3 miles from home. So the town of Messina sits right on the St. Lawrence River,
okay.
and the Racket River and the Grass River kind of divide the town into three parts.
Okay.
Well, we lived fairly close to Route 37, and there was a bridge that crossed the Grass River. And my mom would take me there with my fishing rod, and that was it, my fishing rod and my pocket knife. And she would drop me off, and I would go underneath the bridge with the cars going overhead,
Yeah.
and I would gather mussels from the shore, and I'd crack them open with my
Oh
knife and
yeah.
cut
Oh
the
yeah.
pieces up. And I was just fishing with a bobber and a hook, and I
Oh
was
yeah.
catching little bluegills, little perch. And my mom would come pick me up 4 hours later. And so I was doing a lot of that fishing from, like I said, probably the age of 10. And then as I got older, I got more into stream fishing and
Okay.
river fishing. And I'll tell you, when I was a kid, you talk about fishing lures and equipment like that and how complicated everything has gotten these days. This right here
Oh yeah.
This is the old Mepps Aglia.
Yeah.
This is this spinner, inline spinner, and back in the day, the blade had red and white on it.
Okay.
That was like I carried a little Band-Aid box in my pocket. I had one of those, and then in I don't know 1972, this lure was introduced, the Mister Twister
I was
curly
gonna
tail
say
drum.
that. Oh, those are
The
good to this day.
This thing between that and this and the other thing that I carried that was bigger was a red and white Daredevil spoon.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh
Same as
yeah.
the like a Len Thompson.
Yeah, Len Thompson. I got it behind me.
Yeah. There you go. Oh, the five diamonds.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
and the red and white.
They're good.
I
They're
caught
good colors.
northern pike, bass,
Lake trout love
and
them too.
but oddly enough, I don't carry any of those with me anymore.
No.
And I don't know why. I've gotten, down different paths, but for years growing up, that was all I carried. And if I wasn't fishing with live bait, like mussels and crawlers and shiners, those were the only lures I had.
Okay.
And I just developed this love of fishing. And love of fishing is timeless. I fish with I had my own son loves to fish. He lives in Arizona now, doesn't do much fishing down there, but there is good fishing to be had. Um, but I mean, he became, just a diehard fisherman. And I introduced him. I wish I had a picture of him here as a little kid. I took him out to a little pond and he caught his first smallmouth bass. I can't really use two hands. It was about that big. And you would have thought he'd caught
Oh yeah.
giant. I mean, fishing is ageless. You
Oh
can
yeah.
fish from the time you can hold a rod and reel until you're an old man and you can't get around anymore. You can still get out and fish, and
I'll be
I
honest
love
with
it.
you, I'm still young, but I'm getting older in age. And whenever I catch a fish, let's say it's a big walleye, I think you see it in my videos.
Oh
The
yeah,
excitement that I get inside,
yeah,
the child in me is still there. You know what I mean? And
absolutely,
I that's thanks to
absolutely.
fishing.
And fish and I tournament bass fish, and of
Yeah.
course you're trying to catch big bass. But as you've seen in my fishing videos, every fish I catch is a nice fish. I
Yeah.
don't care if it's a bass that big or a bluegill or if it's, a monster bass. Every fish to me is a nice fish.
Yeah.
And I get teased about that. Oh, I thought you caught some nice fish. I said, they're all nice.
Oh
They're all
yeah.
nice. I love it. So
Yeah.
that was how I got into fishing. Hunting was very similar. It was really my grandfather that got me into hunting as well, because we would go on long hikes and he would carry a gun or he would let me carry it. And where we were in that part of southern Ohio where they had moved to after he retired, there was a lot of woodchucks
Oh yeah.
and the farmers hated woodchucks. So my grandfather, go shoot all the woodchucks you want.
Oh yeah.
And so he kind of got me into hunting by just helping farmers get rid of woodchucks. My dad never really hunted when I was growing up until one day. I guess I was probably 12 years old and my parents were away and I was poking around in their closet and I found these gun cases that had a rifle and a shotgun in them. I never even knew he owned a rifle or a shotgun. And they had locks on them, but they were I asked him, I said, "Dad, you ever hunt?" And he said, "I hunted." My dad grew up in Nebraska out west. On a ranch. And
Okay.
he started talking about hunting and I said, "I want to hunt." And I have two brothers. There's three of us. I'm in the middle,
Okay.
and neither my younger brother or my older brother had any desire to hunt. But I bugged my dad enough that my mom was not hunting.
Okay.
She couldn't bear the thought of her baby killing something. But I was like, you know what? I want to take hunter safety. I took hunter safety, and I got my dad back into hunting, taking me hunting. And
That's good.
so, yeah, that was awesome. And we deer hunted quite a bit, but we never had any success. And surprising, but that was probably because I was a young kid making all kinds of noise and racket. But we never killed a deer together. But we also did a lot of grouse hunting.
Yep.
So he had a friend that had this big farm, and he let us come out there and grouse hunt. We had a lot of open land around us, state land. And then I got kind of into duck hunting, and I got my dad into duck hunting. And we, by today's standards, where you're total camo from head to toe, and
Yeah, yeah,
all that. Well,
yeah.
this was way before that. But we killed a lot. We shot a lot of ducks together too. So I had that bond with my dad that, unfortunately for my brothers, I feel they're the unfortunate ones. They never had that with my dad.
Okay.
And so then, hunting for me became my primary passion. When I left home and I joined the military, I was stationed in northern Maine,
Okay.
way at the top of the state, Loring Air Force Base, and I mean moose country,
Yeah.
deer country, and I really got into deer hunting then. And to be honest, I never shot a deer up there either.
Okay.
But it just fueled my passion for hunting,
Hmm.
and over the years, hunting became my number one passion.
Okay.
Um, I would say it's not as much now. I would say fishing has overtaken that because I've lost a couple of hunting partners over the years,
Okay.
and uh, for me, fishing has kind of taken the lead in my passions. But I'm still very passionate about hunting. I teach hunter safety for the state of New Hampshire on a volunteer basis,
That's good.
and I enjoy that. I enjoy sharing that passion, especially with young people that
Yeah.
are just wanting to get into hunting. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's a very nice story. All the
yeah.
way
Thanks.
from all the way from when you're a kid.
Yeah, from the age young age.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my son doesn't hunt, and that's another story. But he wanted to hunt when he was younger, and he just got away from it for other hobby. He became a freestyle competitive freestyle skier,
Okay.
and that really took his time from mid-November right
Oh
through
yeah.
hunting season, and so he never really got the hunting bug. Still loves to fish. I've got him on a few videos. He came home to visit last summer, and we got to fish together. And I introduced him to kayak fishing,
That's good.
which yeah, he loved it.
And
He
what
loved it.
about now? Can you introduce him to hunting now, or he's not interested?
I don't think he has the desire, and
Okay.
he lives in Arizona,
Okay.
so we don't really
Yeah.
see him very often, unfortunately. But he just got married back
Okay.
in November,
Yeah, I
and
remember seeing
oh
that video. I believe you made a
yeah,
video, right? Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny. Christine, his wife, my daughter-in-law, who we absolutely love. She's originally from Rochester, New York.
Okay.
And at the wedding, I became really good friends with her grandfather, who's just a couple years older than me, and he is a fanatical hunter and fisherman. And so we've already planned some
Oh,
trips
that's good.
for, yeah, stop. We're going out west this fall
Oh, nice.
or late summer. We bought a travel trailer. I think you saw that video.
Yeah.
And on the way back, on the way out, and on the way back, we're going to stop in their area and we're going to do some fishing together. So
That's
that's going to
good.
be fun.
That's a
Yeah, it's going to be
great
fun.
family bond, eh?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
Yeah, I had that bond with my father-in-law too, because my father-in-law was a hunter,
okay.
and he wasn't much of a fisherman. But I did get him out fishing on a couple of different occasions. I had a bass boat at one point in time, and I got him to come out with me and do some fishing in the bass boat.
Oh,
So
that's good.
Yeah, yeah. And he loved it. He had a great time. So,
That's good.
and I think that one of the ways I endeared myself with my in-laws before I married Karen was uh, I was working at a bar. I had just gotten out of the military. I was tending a bar, and the guy that owned the bar was half Native American, half Italian. And the Akwesasne Mohawk Reservation is right between Messina and Cornwall, Ontario. And
Okay.
his sisters lived out on the reservation. And out on the reservation, they can legally net fish because it's subsistence fishing for them as
Yeah.
Native Americans. I'm sure you have the same in
Yep.
Canada. So on Fridays, we would go out to the res, and Art would get a whole bunch of bullhead. We call them bullhead here in New
Yeah.
Hampshire. They call them hornpout.
Okay.
But we'd get bullhead, and then we'd go back in the kitchen. I would skin them, cut them up, and then we would fry them up, and we would put them on the bar for free for people to come in on happy hour.
Okay.
And so one day I knew my in-laws liked fish, and I said, "You got any walleye in there?" And they said, "Yeah, what do you want?" And I said, "Like a nice 6, 7 pound walleye that I can get some big fillets off of." And I got this walleye, and I took it home, and I cooked up a walleye dinner for my in-laws.
Oh yeah.
They loved me
Oh,
after
for
that.
sure,
So
for sure. You won their hearts.
I won their hearts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
But
I was wondering, with all what you told me, all this story, how did that make you decide to start a YouTube channel? How did it all evolve into Bucktails Outdoors?
yeah, so it's funny. My niece, one of my nieces, uh, Karen's oldest brother's youngest daughter, lived with us for a year. And when she graduated college, she moved up to Alaska.
Okay.
And she was an adventure girl. And her now husband went on all these great adventures, and they did a blog, just pictures and stuff. And they would send them, and I loved it. And she says, "Well, geez, Uncle Don, you go on all kinds of great adventures. You ought to record them somehow."
Yeah.
And I was like, "I don't know." And she said, "Start a YouTube channel." So I love to share adventures, and my channel is really, I'm not a how-to channel, although I've done some how-to videos that have gotten really good views. But what my intention was to make videos that just depicted what my day was like outdoors,
Okay.
from the sunrise to me catching fish or shed hunting or hiking or whatever. I just wanted to make videos to share really just with my family, on what I was doing outdoors. And I think it took 2 years before I even had 50 subscribers.
Yeah.
Um, and but I don't really care about subscriber numbers because somebody said, "Well, you can monetize your channel." I didn't want to monetize my channel. I never looked at this as a revenue stream. I just wanted to share what my days and my adventures were like
Yeah.
outdoors with my family. And so I started making videos and trying to figure out how to edit them to make it a decent depiction, excuse me, of what my day was like. And somewhere along the way, I started having people view videos and leave me meaningful comments.
Yeah.
You know what YouTube is like. You'll
Oh
get a
yeah.
hundred comments that say, heart, heart, share the
Yeah.
love,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I've said this in numerous videos. Please don't take offense by this, but I am not a sub for sub channel.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sub to your channel just because you sub to mine. And I will view everybody's channel. If they leave a comment, I'll see what they're about. But if it's not something that really interests me, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
mean,
Same
and I
here.
have a wide range of interests. There's a lot of homesteaders that I love watching,
Yeah.
because I like to see what different people are doing, homesteading, but hunting and fishing, those are my primary things. And hiking, and there's a lot of other channels.
Yeah.
But I started picking up people commenting, and they were leaving meaningful comments that made
Yeah.
me realize, well, they watched the video.
Yeah.
And I started carrying on conversations with people like yourself.
Yeah.
And those conversations started evolving into phone conversations, email conversations, and actually, in several cases, face to face meetings and adventures with people.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is what became important, especially when I retired the first time around. Um, Karen and I hiked, I think we hiked 12 mountains that summer, and I did a video of every one of them. And that was when we still had Tucker. Tucker the dog was
The
our,
Labrador?
last, yeah, the last
Yeah.
yellow lab that we had. And those videos for me, how can I say this? So, besides making videos that depicted my day for my family and stuff, I also thought about the future. You know, when my son gets married and he has kids, and I may not be around when he has kids. And, so it's a way for them to go back and see what grandpa
Yeah.
was all about, you
Yeah.
know? And then there also will come a time, and sometimes I think it's getting close, and sometimes I hope it's still a long ways away, where I'm not going to be able to get out and do the things I love, and I can go back and watch, some of
Yeah.
my videos where I was hiking or hunting with certain friends. And so they're as much probably for me
Hmm.
as they are for anybody.
It's like a journal.
It really is. And I mean, and if you look at my library, I mean, this is amazing. I started doing this in January of 2018. I've made over 800 videos.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I mean, that's, if nothing else, I've been prolific, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But I've developed great relationships,
Yeah.
and I hope, you and I think there's a bond here, and I hope we're not that far apart. That someday I'll come up there and you'll take me to one of your musky honey holes, and
For sure. For sure.
you know,
I'm more than happy to bring people that aren't local to my musky holes.
sure, sure.
But like it's not to be mean, but I put a lot of effort to find these musky
Oh
holes.
yeah, oh
And
yeah, you do.
and if people find them and there's people looking for them, I think if you heard the podcast when I'm talking with Henry,
Yeah,
people
yeah,
are
yeah.
really looking for them and they're writing me and they're mean about
Oh
it.
yeah,
It's not your
yeah,
spot. You should share it. Yeah, but I went on Google Maps on Earth View and I studied the terrain and then
yeah,
I'm like, okay, there's gonna be fish there. Now I've been catching multiple muskies in those holes. And
yeah,
like there's people that want to come, but the only people I'm gonna bring is I have a friend from France. If he's gonna come down, he really wants us to catch a muskie, well, I'll bring him
yeah,
there. You know, as
yeah.
I know he won't go there every weekend with friends.
Right.
Oh,
And and listening to that podcast with you and Henry, I get that completely because I very rarely say where I'm at. Now I may say I'm in the Grass River in Messina. Well,
yeah,
that river is 80 miles long. I could be anywhere on that river. Or I may say I'm on the St. Lawrence. Or I may say I'm on Lake Winnipesaukee, the biggest lake in New Hampshire, which has
yeah.
1,100 miles of footage,
There we go.
But certain places that I go to, I may be the only person there.
Yeah,
And I don't want it to get crowded. And so you probably heard me say, this is my new favorite pond, or this is a
yeah,
local.
uh,
Well, I have a lot of local ponds near me. So I could say, oh, I'm at my local. You don't really know where I'm at. And a lot of people don't know because I don't advertise where I live or where I'm at.
yeah,
But I have had people like, I go to this one place called the Stump Field, and I've done a lot of videos there. But it's a very well known place. There's bass tournaments there almost every other week,
okay,
but it's a bass factory, and it's hard to hide where you're at because it's such a distinctive piece of water.
yeah,
So I have no problem saying today I'm on the Stump Field because there may be 50 other people out there fishing before I even got there.
yeah.
But no, I totally understand what you mean because it's a delicate resource, and I'll give you a perfect example of that. This bass right up here behind my head.
I was going to ask you about it.
That's the biggest bass I've ever caught. I actually caught that down in Florida.
Okay,
I had a good friend down there who had a friend who owned a big pond. It was 50 acres. And it was loaded with big bass. And
Okay.
I'd always said, man, I want to catch a big 10-pound bass and have it mounted.
Yeah.
And he said, brother, if you catch a 10-pound bass in my pond, take it, have it mounted. If you catch anything over 15, you got to leave it. And I was like, 15.
15.
And he had a 15-pound bass hanging on the wall in his house.
Wow.
And he told me that there's a bass in that pond that he says, I know it's over 18 pounds.
That's
So
incredible.
if you catch it, immediately release it, please. And I was
Yeah.
like, yes, yes, yes. So that fish was 10 pounds, 4 ounces.
Oh, that's
And
incredible.
yeah, and my buddy Skip had a good friend who was a taxidermist, a retired taxidermist, and he mounted it for me for nothing. So yeah, that's the one big fish I have mounted. The same year I caught that, one of my local ponds, which I fish on a regular basis, people will recognize it, but I caught a bass. I hooked into a bass that was as big as that bass, and I fought him for 15 minutes because I was using the 6 pound test line.
Oh, yeah.
And there was an old gentleman who was fly fishing in a canoe, and he heard that bass come out of the water. And he probably heard me go, oh my God. And he paddled up behind me and just watched me fight this fish. And that fish came out of the water like 3 times. And every time it came out of the water, I thought I was going to lose it.
Oh, yeah.
And finally, I thought I had it tired enough. And I had a canoe with a trolling motor mounted on the side.
Okay.
And I was reaching down to lip it. And it made one last lunge. And when it went by, the line clipped the trolling motor prop.
Oh.
And off he came. And my rod went twing, and the
Oh.
old man behind me goes, "Son of a!"
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, it wasn't you weren't the one that lost the fish. And I turned around and I said, "Did you see that thing?" And he said, "Son, that's the biggest bass I've ever seen." And I honestly believe it might have been the state record in New Hampshire
Oh,
because
wow.
it was as big as that fish. And at the time, the record in New Hampshire was just under 10 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
And I probably would have let it go. I probably wouldn't have, weighed it or anything, to,
Yeah.
see if it was a record. But um, that same pond started getting, they stock trout in that pond every year. And the bass were just feasting on, these 9 inch trout they were stocking. But some people moved onto that pond and they had a couple of kids in the 12, 14, 15 years old, something like that. And they were out there fishing one day, and I was out there fishing, and I had an okay day. But then I hear them yelling and screaming, and I watched them pull up like a 5 or 6 pound bass, and they
Yeah.
threw it in the bottom of the boat. This
Oh.
pond is only 40 acres, and great population of bass and good sized bass, but they threw it in the bottom of the boat and they kept fishing. A little while later, they caught another really big bass and they threw that in the bottom of the boat. And so I was headed home and I just paddled over and I said, man, you guys caught some big fish, huh? And he said, oh, yeah. And they held them up and they were all covered with, dirt from the bottom of the boat and stuff.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, not my business, right? I mean, I'm a big proponent of catch and eat, but do you realize how old bass are? And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, we live in the north, got a very short growing season for bass. For a bass to be 5 pounds in New Hampshire, he's probably at least 10 years old.
Yeah.
And look at the size of this pond. It cannot sustain the pressure of people keeping the biggest bass.
Yeah.
If you want to catch 12, 14, 15-inch bass, they're probably better eaten anyhow. And, there's a lot of them. There's not very many 5 pound bass in a pond like this. And those are the breeders
Yeah.
that we need to protect. And they just looked at me and like, F you,
Oh.
And I was like, all right, I'm just telling you because one day you're not going to catch any more bass like that
Yeah.
if you keep throwing them in the bottom of your boat. So yeah, it's you got to be careful because some people just they don't care
No, they don't.
about the conservation or the sustaining of the species they just want to take home. Whether they took them home to just brag about them or if they actually ate them, none of my business. But I'm just trying to educate them, you
Now
know?
that's why the government here in Quebec is really severe because there was a time where people were keeping too much.
Yeah.
Now that's why the walleye here is 53 centimeters and over. And there's
Okay.
certain zones, like you cannot keep a walleye higher than 53 and you cannot keep a walleye lower than 37. And
Okay.
then the other zones that are more up north is 32 centimeters to 47. Yeah, 32 to 47.
Yeah.
That's the range where you could keep. But I
So
find that okay because the bigger ones, those are the big females that are laying
those are
thousands of eggs.
breeders.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of slot limits like you're talking about. Seasons.
yeah,
I see people who I belong to a lot of different Facebook groups, whether New
yeah,
Hampshire bass fishing, ice fishing, different stuff like that. And if somebody shows a stringer with three or four, 14, 15-inch bass, had a great day, they will get shamed for keeping any bass.
yeah,
And my comment is, hey, the state puts in creel limits for a reason. They
yeah,
want you to take bass home. They don't want these lakes to become overpopulated with
yeah,
all small fish.
yeah, because they
So
populate a lot. The bass too,
they
also they populate a lot.
absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, it's beneficial to pull out some fish.
yeah,
I've done a video on this one place that I caught 15 bass that day, but I didn't catch one that was over 13 or 14 inches. And one of the comments I got was, "You should be taking some of them home because apparently there's too many bass in there,
yeah.
and they're all skinny."
Well, that's the
And
truth. Yeah,
that's a good point, you know.
yeah.
So there's certain species that I would never keep. Um, I One of my goals is to catch a 40-inch, either a northern pike or a musky. I'm not choosy. I know the musky is the more
Yeah,
prestigious,
yeah.
but a 40-inch northern pike from my kayak.
From your
That's
kayak, he's gonna pull
from
you.
my kayak.
He's gonna
Yeah,
pull you. Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, but I've caught a few muskie. I've caught a few pike. Unfortunately, we don't have either in New Hampshire in any abundance.
Okay.
There's two lakes in New Hampshire, and we've got a lot of lakes that have northern pike in them. And then there's the Connecticut River that runs
Okay.
between Vermont and New Hampshire. That also is a good northern pike fishery. But everywhere else, there's no northern pike. I mean, we have a ton of eastern chain pickerel,
Yeah.
which is the little cousin,
Yeah.
But we don't, and there's no place where you can catch muskie, which is so odd to me because to the east, Maine has great pike fishing and also has muskie. Vermont has great pike fishing. New York has great pike fishing.
Yeah.
Quebec up here has great
Yeah.
pike fishing. Why New Hampshire does not have any pike fishing? Maybe because we've never stocked any and they're considered a species that Fish and Game feels would destroy the trout populations.
Well,
I don't know.
they're absolutely right. Northern
Yeah.
pike, the moment they're in a trout lake, trout are done.
Yeah.
Trout are
Yeah.
finished. And where my videos where I'm fishing in Letuk? That's just above Three Rivers, Trois-Rivières.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
why. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the lake that I'm on fishing for pike used to be a trout lake. That was
Oh,
back
really?
before I was even born.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the pike got in there somehow.
Yeah. And sometimes, and so in New Hampshire, it's illegal to transfer any fish from one body of water to another.
Yeah.
Um, I've broken that law in the fact that my good friend has a bass pond, and I have a
Yeah,
small
yeah, yeah,
pond that
yeah,
has no
yeah, yeah.
exit, no entrance. So I
Yeah,
put a
yeah,
couple
yeah.
bass in there.
Well, I'll be
And
honest with you. If I
the
had a little
otters ate them.
pond, oh, the otters ate them, darn otters. Because if I had a pond, of course I'd break that law too.
I'm not taking them to a public body of water, So it's a spring fed pond, and the water leaches out one side. So, uh, but yeah, I've actually put bass in it a couple different times, and every time they start to get any size to them, the otters come in and wipe them out. So
Ah,
yeah,
oh well.
whatever.
Yeah.
I would like to put some sunfish in there, just to have something in there
Yeah.
besides shiners and
Yeah.
and stuff like
Catfish.
that. But
You can maybe
yeah,
put some
I've thought about
bullheads.
catfish. Yeah, some bullhead. Yeah, bullhead would probably do well in there,
Yeah.
but it's not that big of a pond, so they'd probably get stunted. So,
Yeah.
but
A change
yeah.
of
So speak.
topic. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say a change of topic is the your recovery process when you had your Achilles injury. It led you towards a new hobby, airbrushing and
Yeah.
fishing lures. How did you teach yourself this art, and what inspired you to start a second channel?
So, when I was recovering from the Achilles injury, I couldn't get out and do any ice fishing. I was, pretty much housebound for a long time. And my original intention, I was watching this kid on YouTube called, his name is Nate Marling,
Okay.
and his channel is Marling Baits. And he's a young guy, probably close to your age, in the 30 years old or so range, and he hand carves wooden baits, and then he paints them, and then he goes out and he catches a fish with them, and that's his whole thing. And the
Oh yeah.
kid he's incredible. And he was offering an online class on every aspect of creating lures, carving them and the detail work and then the painting and weighting and all that stuff. And I always just, that was really interesting to me. So I actually signed up to his class. And, I said, man, I really want to start doing this. But out here on the other side of my office is a concrete slab with a porch up above. And my
Okay.
intention was to turn that into a small wood shop. However, it's a lot of money to try to close in an area, put in heat and all that stuff. And so it wasn't going to happen right away. But then I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to go to the trouble of carving lures, I probably ought to learn how to paint
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
So I got looking online about people that were painting baits, and the investment was not that much. And I had a spot in my utility room where my washer and dryer, and there's a base bathroom down in the basement here. And I had a spot there where I had a workbench, and I was like, I can convert this into a little paint shop. And so you've seen the paint shop, you've seen me painting. I mean, it's
Yeah.
very small area. It's 6 feet wide by 4 feet deep,
Okay.
and it's quite crowded now. But I bought an air compressor and an airbrush system off of Amazon, and the paint booth. And I think my initial investment between the compressor and the airbrushes and everything that I needed to get started was probably about $700.
That's not bad.
And so no, not crazy for a hobby that would
Yeah.
keep me busy. And so I started doing it, and I realized that it wasn't really that difficult. I had always been intimidated by an airbrush. I was like,
Okay.
how does that even work? And it's very simple. I mean, I have an airbrush here, right? I mean,
Okay.
your air goes into here, your paint goes up in here in the cup. This trigger here, when you push down on the trigger, there's a valve in here that supplies the air.
Okay.
When you pull back on the trigger, that supplies the paint. They atomize, they come out the nozzle, and you can paint fine lines. I'm not very good at painting fine lines, but you can paint lures. and
Yeah.
and so on the original channel, Bucktails Outdoors, I said, well, I'm not able to ice fish or anything, so let's try painting lures, and I'll just do a video and see if there's any interest.
Yeah.
And so I painted my first lure, was a very basic lure. But if you recall, what I did was I painted three
Yeah.
of each of these lures. And I kept one for myself. I gave one to a subscriber. I said, leave a comment. And in your comment, use keyword this, or
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes I didn't even put a keyword. And then I used a random picker, and I picked a comment, and that person won the lure. And then the caveat was, if you took that lure out and caught a fish with it, and then sent me a picture of the fish with the lure in its mouth, I'd enter you into
Yeah. I
a
remember that.
giveaway,
Yeah.
right? And so I was only going to paint 6, six lures, and so you'd have a 1 in 6 chance
Yeah.
of winning. Well, first lure I sent, my friend from Georgia, who's been a longtime subscriber, Lance Mullis. Mullis is outside again. He won the lure, and it was a jerk bait. It was a what they call a clown pattern. It was basically chartreuse, white belly, red head, and then I'd put some glitter in the clear coat. And I mailed that down to him, and he didn't get it for 6 weeks. And I was tracking it, and I sent him the tracking number. So
Yeah.
I sent him a second one. And so I gave away a lure everywhere for 6 weeks. I had two people ended up sending me pictures. And a couple other responded that, this lure is just not great for where I fish. Or
Okay.
another guy who lived down in Texas was having some family issues, wasn't fishing.
Okay.
But two people. One of them was Sean from Angling
Oh
Spiders out in
yeah. Yeah.
Calgary, Alberta, who's a follower and a friend. Sean won my fire tiger jerk bait, and he caught a bunch of
Oh
northern
yeah.
pike with it.
Well,
He did some videos, really.
you remember I put my name
You
in. I
did,
wanted that one.
and I was hoping you'd win one of
No,
those,
but
and
you got the
I'm probably
perfect
just
guy.
gonna.
You couldn't ask for better for Sean. He's
Yeah.
for Northern Pike. He catches some nice ones.
And he put that lure to the test, and that lure ended up finally breaking. I think
Oh,
he told me that it was about an 11-pound pike that tore the hooks out of the back of it.
yeah,
And
that happens.
but that'll happen even with a good,
Yeah,
quality Rapala.
yeah.
I did a video back in no, maybe 19. I think it was 2019. Me and my buddy Bobby went up to Lake Champlain, and everything we were throwing was fire tiger, and we caught 11 northerns in 2.5 hours before the rain drove us off the lake.
Oh yeah.
And he was using a 9-inch Rapala, uh, and the musky broke it.
Oh
Or
yeah.
not the musky, the northern broke it. It was a 40, I think it was a 41 or 42-inch northern, and it broke the back of it. So I didn't feel terrible. And Sean said, "Hey, they'll do that."
Oh yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
so this was the third lure that I painted,
Yeah, I remember that one.
and this is the one I called this the sexy shad.
Yeah.
Now, this is a funny thing about YouTube. My first video was the clown, and it got 20 comments. The second one was, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was a crappie looking, my crimson crappie, and a neighbor of mine actually won that. It got 21 comments. This lure, which in the title said sexy shad, got 70 comments. And one of my friends said, "Well, sex sells, Don."
Oh
And
yeah.
so I put that to the test. The next one said nothing. The very last video, it got 20 some views, and the next one got 30 some views. The sixth one, in the title, I said, "My version of a bluegill. Is it sexy?" It got 72 comments.
Oh yeah.
So I said, if you put the word sex in a YouTube video, apparently people are going to come look
So
at
we
it.
know what we need to change our channel to, right?
Yeah, right. Right. Everything's sexy. But when I took this down to my buddy Bobby owns a Smith River Trading Post, and it's a archery shop, but he sells tackle as well.
Okay.
When he saw that one, he said, "Don, you got to make more of these and sell them in my shop." And I was like, "Seriously?" And he said, "Don, that looks as good as anything you can buy." And I will say it's one of my better paint jobs. I did a lot of detail work on it. And so I said, "All right, well, how many do you want?" And he said, 24 patterns. Come up. Well, first he said a dozen.
Okay.
And so I said, "All right." And then, we had a spot on the wall amongst all of his other fishing gear, and he made me a big smile. He's my best buddy. So, of course he's going to, help me out.
Yeah.
But I ended up currently, right now, I think I have 30 different lures and patterns down there, and they've sold way beyond my wildest expectations. We sold at his shop between May and I guess November, sold 85 lures,
Wow.
which doesn't sound like a lot,
No,
but
it's
for
good. It's really
me,
good. Oh
that
yeah.
was a lot. And then between, I was posting stuff on Facebook, and I was starting to get I sold 200 lures in the first 8 months.
That's
And
good.
I just was like, okay, well, that's crazy. I never would have imagined that. So right now, I've started showcasing my lures on Instagram. I just started an Instagram page, and I'm putting the first. I put up a lure every day or every other day with the fish that they've caught,
Yeah.
and I'm actually going to start a website
Okay.
here probably next month. Uh, but so I kind of got away from that. When he said you need to start selling these, I said, all right, well, something totally different. I'm going to start a separate channel and try to show people don't be intimidated by this because it's not that hard. I mean, I go to different sportsman shows and I see people that paint lures that are 100 times better than me. But I think what I'm trying to do is show people that you can paint lures that'll catch fish,
Yeah.
and it's not that difficult. And I never thought I would make a little business out of this, but I'm retired, so you know
Yeah.
I, I
It's
need
a
some stuff to do,
fantastic
especially in
sideline
the
too.
winter. This one here, I'll show you this one. This one is my version of a yellow perch
Very
on
nice.
a just it's a shallow diving crankbait. It goes down to about 4 feet.
Okay.
I've sold 30 of these. This has become my most popular best selling lure.
I could see a
And
northern pike wanting that.
yeah. And so then I have a friend who's in the kayak anglers club. He said, well, can you paint that pattern on a different lure? And I said, yeah, what are you looking for? He said, how about a lipless crankbait? Okay. So there it is on a
Very
lipless
nice.
crankbait. And then he said, did you ever paint it on a whopper plopper? I said, well, I can. And so I painted it on this whopper plopper. And now I've got 6 different lures that I kind of paint that same pattern on. And it's a very simple process. In fact, it's one of the easiest lures for me to paint
Oh yeah.
because I'll show you. And, you want to see a little bit about how I do things.
Yeah.
This is a lure blank. Now you can buy these on Amazon, and they're not great, but some of them are good.
Okay.
And there's a couple of outlets, American outlets that you can buy them from. They cost a little bit more, but they're clear plastic. The bill is generally got all kinds of defects on it,
Okay.
whether it's just molding marks or whatever. So what I do is I rough up this bill with steel wool
Yeah, yeah.
so it's opaque. And I think I described this in a couple of different videos. And then I spray it with Rust-Oleum 2X Clear because the first thing I said to my buddy is if I'm going to sell lures, they
Yeah.
can't look like that.
And also there's one of your steps that you put rubbing alcohol to remove any of your finger grease.
So yeah, so after I've done the whole idea of roughing it up, then I'll rub it down with alcohol
Yeah.
to take care of finger oil because I found on this one, this is when I first started, I was just putting the epoxy right on the lip.
Okay.
Well, I put in a comment to a forum that I was belonging to, Lure Painters group,
Okay.
saying, I showed some pictures. The epoxy was puddling up and pulling away from certain areas. And all the comments, ouch, I got that. Stuck myself.
Oh, you cut
All,
yourself.
all the yeah, all the comments I got back was the bill and there's finger oil there.
Okay.
So I took care of that.
It's
Rough them up.
incredible, eh? Though all the minor details.
All the little details that
Yeah.
are you don't think about until you start doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So then what I'll do is once it's clear coated and dried, I'll tape the bill up to protect it. And
Okay.
then these have just been primed in white. Right
Okay.
now I've got a bunch of lures sitting up there primed. The bills are all treated because I kind of try to do it in groups. And then it's just like on the perch. So once it's primed, then I do the belly with a
Oh
pearl
yeah.
white.
I like the
Then I'll
orange.
take Yeah, and then I'll take a gold and I'll paint everything but the belly, and I'll try to blend it in, paint it gold. Then I take a little green, put that on the back, come down the sides a little bit to give it that greenish gold.
Yeah.
And then I take a little sponge. Those bars, those perch bars, are done with a little tiny sponge that I dip in the paint and then dab it on there to give it a look you can't get
Yeah.
painting by spraying. I mean, and then in between every coat, I'm cleaning the airbrush, and it's a little bit of a process because the problem with the airbrush is that needle is so fine. If the paint starts to dry on it at all, which doesn't take long, you start getting splatters and clogs and
Yeah.
stuff. And then I'll just put a little of this sepia color on the back, blend it in around the eyes. I like to darken up around the eyes a little bit. A little orange on the belly, and then it's a matter of putting on the eyeballs and
Yeah.
then putting the epoxy on. And I put the first coat of epoxy, and it takes 12 hours on the rotisserie to dry to get a nice even coat so it doesn't
Okay.
run. Then I put my little logo on the bottom of it,
Ragged Edge
which
Lure
is
Works.
Ragged Edge Lure Works, it says. And then I'll put a second coat of epoxy on it. So, I mean, it's about a 3-day process for lure from start to completion.
Still a lot of
Even though the
time.
paint, it is. The videos are generally relatively short. Some of them I get a little longer because I'm trying to. Almost every video that you see on my painting channel is often the very first time I've ever attempted that pattern.
Okay.
Because I just want to show people I'm experimenting. I'm
Yeah.
trying to come up with a color combination that's, unique, different. Some of these paints I don't even know what they look like until I start painting them on the lure. You'll see a couple coming up where I'm using color shift paints, which
Yeah.
you turn the lure and they change colors. And they don't look anything in the bottle like they look on a lure. So it's a lot of just raw experimentation, and it's so fun. It's so fun. Um, and that channel's actually growing quite nicely. I mean, it's been I started it in, I guess, May, and I'm almost at 400 subscribers. I'll probably hit 400 subscribers next week.
Oh, that's good.
And this is my 400 subscriber giveaway lure. Just a quick
Oh.
tease.
Oh, I saw
it's
it.
it's a it's a really cool lure body that I'd never seen before, and a buddy told me where to get it. So I painted it up in kind of a red-breasted sunfish pattern.
Oh, it looks nice.
Uh, but yeah, it's I think it's pretty cool looking. And so that's the video. That's the lure I'm gonna give away in the next 400 subscriber video.
All right.
Uh,
So
but
everyone
yeah,
heard
that's
that. Everyone heard. Go pay attention.
yeah. Go sub to the channel. All you gotta do is be a subscriber and leave a comment and like the video, and I'll enter you into the giveaway. And it's all done by a random comment picker, so
Yeah.
it's all good. But yeah, that's the Ragged Edge Lure Works story.
Thanks for
Never
sharing
anticipated.
the do-it-yourself tutorial. I really like that.
I never thought it would turn into what it's turning into. Some of my buddies, Don, you got to quit painting. You're going to have any time to fish. But
Yeah. Well, as long as you
yeah,
don't spend all your summer heat, hot days
no, no, no,
down
no.
there.
Summer. Well, you know,
Well, if you're selling some
so,
now, you might have to, but
sleep is overrated, right? So I could fish all
yeah.
day
Yeah.
and paint all night.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no. Right now I've got a really good inventory in preparation for opening up a website. So I'm not going to worry about painting lure. I still got months to go before I can do anything, and I'm
Yeah.
just going to just keep painting until I'm ready to fish.
Yeah. I would like to talk to you a bit about your homestead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
from what we see on YouTube, a very beautiful place.
Yeah.
How long have you been there, and like what influenced you to move
So
there?
yeah, I told you I grew up in the town of Messina, which
Yeah.
is a relatively small town, a
Yeah.
little bit of an industrial town, but we lived on the edge of town, so it was kind of in the country. Of course, when I was in the military, I was stationed a couple different places, Texas, Illinois, but most of my time up in northern Maine. And I'm a country boy.
Yeah.
from the get-go. My wife and I actually moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma for about 6 years. So that was my introduction to city life. Tulsa's a
Yeah.
pretty big town. But my wife had a job opportunity to come to New Hampshire. And I'd been to New Hampshire many times. When I was stationed up in Maine, there's a big motorcycle weekend down here every year. And me and a bunch of my Air Force buddies would ride our motorcycles down and spend a weekend down here. And
Okay.
I just, New Hampshire is just a gorgeous, gorgeous state.
It really looks
It's
beautiful.
it's got a lot. I mean, we're right in the mountains.
Yeah.
The ocean is an hour away this way. If you want to go to a big city, Boston's down here, less than 2 hours away. So you've got mountains, you've got lakes, you've got rivers, got just miles of woods. And I
Yeah.
always said, if we get a chance to move to New Hampshire, and my wife got a job opportunity here, we jumped on it. We rented a little house, and then my dad passed away, and so I got a little bit of insurance money from that. And I said, we got to buy a piece of land.
Yeah.
And so we started looking around, and I was working at this company, Freudenberg, which is 10 miles away. At the time, I was working there, and I said, well, let's get somewhere near here. And we found this beautiful 5-acre piece of property. There was a relatively new ski area. You know,
Okay.
that's my view. If I wanted to cut down a bunch of trees, but in the winter, that's my view. And I just said, my wife liked to ski. I like to ski. I said, this is perfect. This is, so we bought this piece of land, and for a year or so, we just had a camper up here. I had a pop-up camper that we kept. And my mom, after my dad was gone, my mom moved down to Massachusetts, to the western part of the state,
Okay.
and she met another guy, my stepdad, who was an awesome guy, and they lived in a log house.
Okay.
And I've always wanted a log house.
Yeah.
Since I was a kid playing with Lincoln logs, the
Yeah.
building kit. And so one of my stepdad Bruce, one of his friends, sold log house kits. So we built this house. It's been 35 years ago, I guess, we built it. I built this house with all volunteer labor. Other
Oh
than
yeah.
I had the foundation dug and the foundation put in, and then I had the plumbing, the base plumbing all put in, and then we kind of custom ordered a very simple log kit, and my mom and my stepdad, two of my good Air Force buddies, and just a couple of friends that I made here. We put this house up on the logs were delivered on a big flatbed trailer.
Oh yeah.
The logs and the scissor trusses for the roof and the plywood for the top of the roof and all the windows and doors, and it was all delivered on a flatbed trailer. And we had a local guy, bring it up the hill, because my house sits about 600 feet above the road.
Okay.
And everybody told me I was crazy to build up on the hill because you got to deal with that in the winter, and it's true. It can be a chore to plow. Everybody said, "Oh, you should build right down by the road," and I said, "I don't want to build right on the road. I want to
No.
be up away from the road where I have my privacy."
Yeah.
Excuse me. Um, so yeah, the logs were delivered the Saturday before our Thanksgiving, which is in late November. And my buddy Dave, one of my Air Force buddies, and they're all numbered on the end. They all have a number on them. And
Okay.
so we arranged all the logs. And then the next day, all my help showed up, and we started putting this house together, kind of like a Lincoln Logs
Oh yeah.
home kit. And so Sunday before Thanksgiving Day, which is Thursday, we had the plywood on the roof. All the windows and doors were in,
Wow.
and it was basically a shell. And I had a little local restaurant in our little tiny town that had just opened up, and they made us. I had 10 people, and they made us a home style Thanksgiving dinner.
Wow.
And I treated everybody to Thanksgiving dinner. And then most people left. My buddy Dave and another friend, the next day, we put the shingles on the roof. And the next day, we got 20 inches of snow.
Oh, wow. Perfect
So
timing.
the house was closed in, and then it snowed. And then it was just me coming up and finishing the house off by myself, doing the interior work. And then I had a plumber come and do the plumbing, and I had an electrical guy do the electrician,
Yeah.
all the electrical work. But yeah, everything here was we built ourselves. My wife was actually our son was born in February, and we moved into this house with still a lot of open wood, studded walls that weren't finished,
Oh, yeah.
and our son was born. So yeah, it's an awesome place. I've since added some stuff,
Yeah.
and I had a gentleman one day. I was working in my office. I worked a lot from home, and I had knock on the door, and I went to the door, and there's an older gentleman, and he said, "I said, yeah, can I help you?" And he said, "Yeah, my name is so and so," and he said, "I own a piece of property next to yours, and I'm thinking of selling it, and I'm wondering if you're wanting to buy it." And I was like, "Which piece is it?" And he said, "Well, it's either that piece or that piece."
Oh,
I
yeah.
kind of thought it was this piece, but I bought it so long ago. I have, so it turned out to be the spot to our east,
Okay.
which is a beautiful piece of property. All a lot of ledge, some really steep hills. Nobody was ever going to build on it unless they built right on the road.
Okay.
And so I was like, "Well, how much do you want for it?" Now, back in the 80s when I bought this piece was 80, 88, 88 or 89. I mean, it was
Okay.
89. I'm sorry. Property was going for really high dollars. This piece of property, 5 acres, costs $30,000.
Okay. For
Now,
88, yeah.
yeah, but now, like the piece down here is for sale. They want 95 for it,
Okay.
and it's so he said, "Well, I bought it for 10,000. I'd like to make $1,000 on it. Would you be willing to give me 11,000 for it?" And I said, "I would. I don't have that money. I'm going to have to go take out a quick loan.
Yeah.
Don't talk to anybody." And we shook hands, and I went to the bank, and I got the money, and so now I have 10 acres here,
That's
which
good.
is which is awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm very fortunate in that the road I live on just ends in a gravel pit,
Okay.
small sand pit, really. So there's like a cul-de-sac and just kind of around. Very few houses. I can actually now. There has been some development. There's two houses behind me now that weren't there before.
Okay.
So when you saw me hunting from my watch,
Yeah. Yeah.
the blind that I
Yeah.
built,
Yeah. Yeah.
I hunted mostly with the crossbow, just because if I was hunting with my rifle back there, it's a very safe zone because the houses are way up above me.
Yeah.
Just, but just out of respect
The
for
gunshot
those
sound.
neighbors,
Yeah.
yeah. And gunshots around here are not unusual. People that come to visit me is often amazed because a lot of people just like to target shoot. And where we
Okay.
live, I mean, I can go out. In fact, I have some, steel targets out back. I used to shoot a lot. So gunshots are not unusual. But now that I know the neighbor who bought that, so the guy that lived there before became a good friend, and he said, "You can hunt through my property." So I can actually leave my property, cut through. It's Bill's property, but before it was Bernie's. Cut through his property, get onto another piece of property that another friend of mine owns, which is 88 acres.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he lets me hunt that. He only lets two people hunt his property. He's got it all posted, and he only allows me and another friend of mine to hunt it. But then beyond that, I used to be able to walk for 3 miles without coming to another road.
That's fun.
So there's a lot of good property beyond my place to hunt.
Okay.
In fact, the big buck that I shot, the pig, that I call the pig, I don't know if you've seen that story. My biggest buck ever. I got pictures of him in my food plot, and then the next year I shot him less than a mile mile from my
I
house.
yeah, I remember that story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was crazy. So yeah, this place, I call it the homestead. It's, you know, I built what I at the beginning was going to be a barn. It's kind of turned into a garage and a
Yeah.
shop. But when I just decided to retire, I said, I think I'm going to get chickens and a couple things like that. I have not done that yet, but it's just a beautiful, peaceful piece of property. It's there's a ski resort very close. So unfortunately, the main road that we come off of gets kind of crazy busy in the winter.
Okay.
And but when that's closed, then it's a nice peaceful area.
Yeah.
When I had before I had the house here, I just had my pop up camper, and I would sit out there and build a campfire and
Oh
never
yeah.
hear a car go by, you know.
Yeah.
And we're not near any big towns, so there's not a lot of ambient light, so you can just look up and see the stars.
Yeah.
You see all the different
Yeah. Oh
constellations, and
yeah.
yeah, I love living out here in the country. I
Oh yeah.
never want to move back into a bigger town. And
Well,
someday
I
it'll
know.
be too much for me to handle,
Yeah.
but but we'll see.
Yeah.
Play that card when it's dealt.
I know your feeling because I grew up in the country. For 20
Yeah,
years, I lived on the land where my mom is and got my job opportunity. I studied refrigeration and I got an
yeah,
opportunity in Montreal. I took the
yeah,
job offer, but I never thought I was going to stay there for so long. But then I met my wife, got a family. So we
yeah.
moved out to Mascouche, but it's a city. It's just a smaller city, 25 minutes from Montreal.
Okay.
But as I'm getting older, I'm really feeling that urge that I really want to go back to the country. But for now, with the kids, for school,
Oh yeah,
I need to start. I want to buy a piece of land, and my wife knows it, but it needs to be the perfect piece of land. My heart needs
yeah,
it. You know,
yeah,
I see
yeah.
land for sale, and I'm like, no, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. I want it. I'm going to be 37 in April. I want it by 40. My
That's
goal is
good.
by 40.
Good goal to shoot for. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, and then we'll see what the future reserves after that, if we build off of it or just a
yeah.
cottage. But I need to reconnect with nature more often than what I am now. I feel it.
And, and there's nothing like it. I mean, it rejuvenates your soul.
Yeah.
I've said this before. Um, Either on a mountain or a stream or a lake someplace is where I have always felt closest to God,
Yeah.
is when I'm out in the pristine
Yeah.
creation, you
Yeah.
know? And yeah, there's nothing like it.
Yeah. There's something that I learned that stuck with me from your Bucktails Outdoors YouTube channel is the hen of the
Okay.
woods mushrooms,
Oh yeah.
also
Yeah.
known as
Mataki.
maitake. Maitake. Yeah, you're the one who showed
Mataki.
me that word. I'm
Yeah.
very impressed
Yeah.
how you collect, and I even remember one video where you mixed it with your venison.
Oh man. The venison stroganoff
Yeah.
with the mataki and the noodles. Oh, that was so good. So I think I told you way early on where my grandfather used to take me out foraging for
Yeah.
mushrooms in Ohio. And in Ohio, the primary mushroom, at least that we forage for, and it was the time of year that we would go visit them, are morels.
Okay. Yeah.
Morels, in fact, this is funny. This this is what a morel looks like. This is something that my friend CJ made out of.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know what it's made out of, but it's this is basically what a morel mushroom looks like.
Okay.
And my grandfather and I used to go out and collect these. They grow near elm trees most predominantly, which we don't have in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And my grandmother would slice these up, fry them in butter, make homemade bread, cut it and toast it, and then we would have mushroom sandwiches. It was like heavenly, right?
Living
It's,
off the land.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so wherever I lived in this country, I've always gone looking for morels and just not been able to find them like we did in Ohio.
Okay.
Um, I found a place here in New Hampshire that has a few, and they usually come back in the same areas, but the timing is this very short span. My friend CJ, who I don't know if you ever knew CJ, he
Well, I
had a
saw
channel called.
where you got your deer.
I went where I got my big buck was
Yeah,
at
yeah.
CJ's farm in Ohio. He lives in Ohio.
Okay,
CJ is foraging expert,
okay,
and he kind of turned me on to hen of the woods. Now there's four mushrooms that I feel comfortable foraging for.
okay,
One of them is now hen of the woods, which my wife found a beautiful flush of hen of the woods because my wife gets out and hikes every day with the
okay,
dog. And so I've kind of turned her on to looking for mushrooms. So hen of the woods is one. Chicken of the woods is another. I think I did a video where I found a really beautiful piece of chicken of the woods here, which grows on oak trees. Hen of the woods also grows or near oak trees. And then morels, and then black trumpets. Black trumpets are very distinctive. And the thing I like about all four of these mushrooms is they don't have a poisonous look-alike.
okay.
Like for me, I find a lot of mushrooms that I think might be chanterelles, but they
Yeah,
also might be jack-o'-lanterns. And
okay,
jack-o'-lanterns will make you sick as a dog.
okay.
So I don't pick them just because I don't have that much knowledge, you
Yeah,
know.
it's risky. You need to be an expert.
Yeah. But hen of the woods, and they are so good. And I don't know if up, I'm sure in Montreal you must have some great markets for produce. And you can maybe buy maitake mushrooms at one of these markets.
Okay,
Especially I would think especially like a natural foods type co-op or something like that. But advice I can give you about looking for hen of the woods, and I don't know how much oak you guys have in Quebec. I know you have a lot of maple, a lot of
yeah,
softwoods, but I think oak is probably a little farther south for you guys.
yeah.
That's the tree that they primarily grow either on the base of or on rotten oak logs.
Okay.
They have become my favorite tasting mushroom. They're so good. And that dish I did on that uh, venison stroganoff,
Yeah.
oh my God, that was so good. That was
It
so
looked
good.
good. It looked good.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what, I want to get more involved in foraging for mushrooms. And a lot of it comes at the perfect time
Oh, oh yeah.
for looking for shed antlers.
Okay.
Don't want to forget that. I know we got limited time, but shed hunting is another passion.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I never
So
found any sheds, but where my mother's forest is only 15 acres, and I don't
yeah,
really venture onto the neighbor's side. But
yeah.
on our side, I never found sheds on the ground.
So advice I get for looking for shed, Chris, where we live, there's no agriculture around here. But
Okay.
I know if you go east of Montreal, I mean, I used to come up from Newport, Vermont, and cross in that way and come down. There's just a ton of agricultural land, and in between all those big fields, there are blocks of timber. And I don't know what it's like in Quebec as far as people granting you access. It's probably difficult to get hunting access, but probably not so difficult to get hiking access.
Yeah.
And so I would say looking along the edge of fields where fields and woods
Okay. Yeah.
meet, looking for areas where deer bed
Yeah.
or where deer typically feed. It takes a lot of miles. I mean, I kept a log one year. I found 14 sheds, but I put on over 100 miles of walking to
That's
find 14
incredible.
sheds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're hard. They're hard to spot
Yeah, that's
sometimes.
another thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what you got. Look, this one here. This is one of my favorite sheds because this is the biggest shed that I found in New Hampshire.
It's
And
incredible.
My old dog Tucker found it. And only this much was sticking out of the snow,
Okay.
and he smelled that.
Now that's good.
And I walked for miles and miles looking for the mate, and I could never find it.
Well,
Bodie,
it's a smart trick to teach your dog.
Yeah, Bodie is a natural.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, he's not found any sheds with me, but Karen, he's found two moose sheds. He's found a matched set of deer antlers, and then I think he's found five antlers
Oh
last
yeah.
spring.
That's good.
So yeah, and it helps to have a wife that loves to get out there and
Yeah.
bushwhack and beat the woods. She doesn't like to hunt, but she's a great scout.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Before closing off, are there any exciting projects, adventures, or goals you're looking forward to that you'd like to share with us?
So yeah, I mean, once I get back into able to kayak,
Yep.
um, kayak bass fishing tournaments. I'm going to miss the first three of our group this year, but I'm going to be working on a project to help me mechanically load my kayak onto the trailer.
Yep.
I'm looking really forward to that,
I'm anxious to see it.
and getting back into kayak angling. I am so we I did a one video where I took Karen and Bodie and I modified one of my earlier kayaks to make it a little more friendly for the dog, putting some EVA foam on the bottom, but it's still kind of tippy. I just made a deal with a buddy of mine who bought a new canoe, F10, which is super wide, wide open, very, very stable. And I'm going to go pick that up in May. And so I'm going to have a kayak strictly dedicated to taking the dog out.
Oh yeah.
So whether it's Karen and the dog, in one kayak and me in another, we're going to do some kayak adventures. The other thing, and I said I don't want to make my channel a camping trailer camping channel. We bought this travel trailer and we're going to go to Montana
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're going to take a month-long vacation and travel out to Montana. And we're going to see some amazing places on the
Yeah.
way because that's one part of the country. I have family there, but I've never been.
Okay.
So we're going to go through the Dakotas to Wyoming to
Oh
Montana.
wow.
We're
Oh
going
yeah.
to see Yellowstone. So I'm going to bring those to the channel. It'll be something different, but I'm also hopefully going to do some fishing along the way.
I hope so.
So this summer, I'm really looking forward to traveling and fishing in more places that I've never been. So
Yeah. Oh, that's
yeah,
nice. I'm anxious to see that.
yeah, it'd be fun. Be fun. Be something different.
Well, Don, thank you very much for taking the time to be a part of the podcast.
Well, thank you, Henry, for having me. It's been a pleasure. I did
Yeah.
most of the talking, which is
Well, that's
typical for
okay.
me, but
That no, it's been an absolute pleasure hearing your stories.
yeah, I love sharing them.
All
All
right.
right.
I wish you the best for your rotator cuff injury. I hope the healing process goes good and that we see you on the water as soon as possible.
Right. Hopefully sooner than later.
Make
All
sure to
right.
check out Don's YouTube channels and following along on his journey. I'll be adding the links to his channels in the description. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on another exciting episode of the Wild Game Anglers Podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Henry.
You're welcome.
Peace.
Thank you. Thank you.